Just, just the Zoom cliches. Hope you can see my screen clearly and hear me clearly. We will start. Tonight is all about OKRs in action, and a critical discussion from the onset that we have when we enroll companies into OKRs from the onset is OKRs or KPIs or both, outcome or outputs or both. Now, there's a very quick answer to that, but we'll need more time for clarification. The very quick answer is it's both OKRs and KPIs. It's both outcomes and outputs, but we'll need more clarification. It's a bit more complex than that. But the very simple answer is yes. We use both OKRs and KPIs, and we focus mostly on outcomes when it comes to OKRs. But of course, part of an OKR framework is the action, the outputs. Let's start with communication. Why would I put up a slide on communication when we're talking about KPIs and OKRs or outcomes and outputs? It's because during the rollout of OKRs, that's mostly what we struggle with. How to communicate the difference between KPIs and OKRs from the onset. How to communicate how we will draft OKRs in our organization. Will we focus on outcomes? Will we be output focused? If those elements are not clarified to a degree of 100% from the onset, it's very difficult to create consistencies in the way we draft OKRs. So communication with a return on investment is critical when it comes to KPIs and OKRs, how they integrate, and also the difference between outcomes and outputs. So quickly on communication with a return on investment, we should use communication as a tool for success when we roll out OKRs. We should maintain the leadership management balance. That means if we want to achieve outcomes jointly, we should have a high level of inspiration. Management is about controls, so there should be a little bit of planning at least. There should be controls in place, such as budgets, for example. Everything in an OKR framework happens at the speed of trust. It's not even worthwhile to have the debate. Is it KPIs versus OKRs? Do they complement each other? Should we continue using KPIs as we roll out OKRs? If there is a low level of trust in your team environment. Everything is slow. The implementation of OKRs would be slow. The rollout of OKRs, how we draft OKRs, everything will slow down. How we innovate, the rate of innovation, the rate of implementation will slow down. How do we uplift trust in a team environment? It's by being, first of all, totally transparent in our communication. How are OKRs aligned to the vision? It makes the vision transparent of the company. How are OKRs aligned to strategy? How our team level OKRs in turn align to the top level of strategic OKRs. We need consistency in messaging. When we kick off OKRs with our town halls, when we have our weekly check-ins and our quarterly reviews, we should be consistent. We should be inspiring. We should have open discussions. We should collaborate in our communication to achieve jointly. If that is not there, again, it's not worthwhile to have the debate between OKRs versus KPIs, or do they complement each other. We should communicate with empathy and give everybody a voice in our teams. If we have an environment such as this, then both OKRs and KPIs can complement each other and thrive. Also, we have to communicate in a way that highlights our priorities. Through OKRs, we truly measure what matters, and our KPIs is the health metrics, also essential metrics. But let's have a deeper look into the differences between OKRs, but also how they complement each other. Well, I say this tongue in cheek, but how dare we say that an increase in sales and doubling our user base are bad examples of objectives? Because every company that approach us to introduce OKRs within their company or organization say that they, of course, have to increase sales. They have to increase their profit. they have to double or increase their user base. So how dare we say those are bad objectives? They are instead basically KPIs. They're very necessary measurements, very necessary goals, but they are health metrics. Strong objectives, on the other hand, is to increase our engagement on the website, which leads to more high-quality leads. That's a high-quality objective. It's outcome-focused. It's not a lagging metric, not measuring past performance. Launch an awesome minimum viable product that delights first adopters is another example of a strong objective. So do we need measurement such as measuring sales performance, increasing our sales? Of course we do. Those are health metrics, but those are KPI related. Why are we focused on outcomes when we draft OKRs, when we align OKRs? It's based on the business impact report results from analyzing over 40,000 goals across 3 years and across over 3,000 teams. It validated that we are on 30% on average more likely to achieve goals with outcome management. Why? Because outcomes focus on the value that we add, the benefits that we create, the impact that we create within our organization, also for all our stakeholders, especially our customers, our users. When we are outcome focused, we are more inspirational, and it's much simpler. It's not simple, but it's much simpler to pursue far-reaching, inspiring, outcome focused goals. But here's the difference between outcomes and outputs. As I alluded to earlier, outcomes is the value that we add, the benefit that we create, and also the impact that we create. Let me give a very simple example. If we have a goal such as create a new feature, the problem with that goal is we as a team can go ahead and create the new feature and we can tick the box. We have achieved the goal. Yet we were not focused on an outcome, a benefit gained from introducing that new feature. The value that we want to create through that new feature was not focused on. So we can achieve the goal, but without adding any value, for example. It could be a feature that is of no impact. That's the danger of writing output-focused objective statements. So an outcome refers to the benefit that we want to create, the value that we want to add to our stakeholders. It refers to the impact, change, or result that emerges from an initiative. It represents the meaningful difference or value or impact created by achieving specific objectives. On the other hand, outputs are activity-based. My example just was recently create a new feature. It might be valuable to create that new feature, but if you are not outcome focused, the goal is only to create the new feature, we fall back into a tick the box syndrome. We can simply draft task lists and attain it and then call it OKRs. But of course, there's deliverables in projects, there's tasks that needs to be completed, and that can be at action plan level within our OKR framework. So of course, there's an element of outputs within an OKR framework, but overarchingly, we are focused on achieving outcomes at objective level. Also, our key results are outcome focused, generally speaking. So outputs represents the tangible deliverables, artifacts, byproducts that are produced through specific activities or tasks. They may be concrete and observable results of work, typically expressed as completed tasks, reports, designs, or other measurable deliverables. Our challenge is if we have inconsistencies, back to the first slide, if we did not clearly communicate within our organization, what will we be focused on when we draft OKRs? Will we be focused on outcomes, outcome-focused key results as well? If that was not clearly communicated, we see total inconsistencies amongst teams. Some teams might draft outcome-focused OKRs. Other teams might draft easy-to-attain output-focused OKRs, task lists. which is not a big issue in itself, but when those teams need to collaborate, there's often fights breaking out over it. There's total inconsistencies. It's very hard to agree on the way forward if that is the case. We are generally trained to be output focused and output driven. At school, we were taught to draft task lists. At university, early on in our career, most of us still do that. We draft task lists. It gives us that dopamine hit when we tick them off. We have achieved our tasks. But the issue with the task list, it's of course not wrong, but were those tasks really impactful? Were they prioritized? Were they leading towards a certain desired outcome for the company? If the answer is no to those questions, it might be useless effort. But if we align our tasks ultimately to outcomes, they could be more impactful, more beneficial for the company and all our stakeholders. But here's a clear way to differentiate between output-driven thinking and outcome-driven thinking. If I have studied for my science test, that is an output-focused statement. It's purely an activity. It does not state for how long did I study. Did I even study well enough to pass the test? For what purpose did I study? What impact, what benefit do we want to gain? That was not clearly stated within that statement. If, however, I transform that statement into saying, I passed my science test with the highest grade in order to become a doctor, then at least we are more outcome-focused. There's a benefit to be gained. There's an impact. There's value created. We have decided to buy a car. That's purely a statement of a decision that we have made, not the value that we want to generate through buying that car. It fails the purpose test. Why? For what purpose did we buy this car? Do you, for example, need it as a status symbol? But transforming it into a more outcome-focused statement would sound like buying a car allows us to be 100% more flexible wherever and whenever we need to travel somewhere. We have started using AI. Now, every company on the face of the planet, every individual, every team can start using AI. But within that statement, we see no value that we are in pursuit of, no impact that we want to create. The purpose is lacking in that statement. If, however, we transform it to saying using AI allows us to improve a better customer support experience, to validate that, now we are more customer focused, we are more focused on value that we add to the customer, therefore we are more outcome focused. So again, it is both. It's both outcomes and outputs. But the outputs can be at task level. But we are more focused on outcomes throughout an OKR framework. It can include outputs, but we are more focused on outcomes. Our objective statement should be outcome focused. Our key results should mainly lead towards an outcome. Now to the question, OKRs or KPIs or both. Back to the first slide, we need to clearly communicate the difference. If not, there's fear, there's doubt, there's insecurities, there's a high level of resistance to change when we implement OKRs. If the difference between OKRs and KPIs have not been totally clarified from the onset. Now, put yourself in the shoes of somebody that has effectively used KPIs for decades, and now suddenly OKRs is being introduced. Now, I have received numerous bonuses according to my KPI achievement. Now, suddenly it's in question. Would we continue with KPIs? That's not clearly communicated. Then you are likely to see a high level of resistance to change from me. And that is the reason why we need to clarify this from the onset. OKR's goal execution framework. It's a whole framework. We have our objectives that's aligned to objectives at a higher level, strategy and vision. We have our key results, which is the measurables in support. We have our action plan that leads us towards achieving key results. It's a framework that fills the strategy and execution gap. Whereas KPIs measure the health of your business. They are health metrics. Indicators if your business is healthy or not, mostly lagging indicators measuring past performance. OKRs are top-down, so you can turn a key result at a higher level into an objective statement at a lower level, for example. Bottom-up, team-level OKRs are aligned to higher level strategic OKRs, and also we see horizontal alignment. So we see different team members from different teams owning a key result, for example, in the same framework. KPIs, usually, it's always context dependent, but most often purely handed down. You are told what your KPIs are. They are generally not co-created. OKRs are outcome focused on the value that we want to add, the benefits that we want to create, whereas KPIs generally output focused. OKRs are future directed. Mostly we are validating hypotheses through OKRs. We are testing new ground. We are innovating. We are transforming through OKRs. Whereas KPIs, mostly lagging indicators measuring past performance. OKRs are inspiring. They are outcome focused, clearly stating the value that we want to create towards the vision, the mission, and strategies of the company. Whereas KPIs are controlling and provide benchmarks. OKRs have a set time period. OKRs have cycles. So usually at team level, we go through quarterly cycles. That's also context dependent, but OKRs change. KPIs are measured on an ongoing basis. There's also a relationship between KPIs and OKRs. They complement each other. But to take a step back, also all agile methodologies, if deployed in unison, deployed correctly, most optimally, they do complement each other. Turning an unhealthy KPI into a healthy one with the help of OKRs. Let's say there's a decline in sales. We have a sales KPI. We want to increase sales by 10%, for example. But the actual fact is there's a poor performance. We are actually seeing and witnessing a decline in sales. Now we can write an OKR framework that supports, uplifts that decline in sales. So that is part of the relationship between OKRs and KPIs. Then also an achieved OKR. If we break it down into key result level, a key result can turn into a KPI because we've validated the hypotheses. We have proven that it can be done. We now know exactly how it could be done, so it can become part of our business as usual related, therefore can then be turned into a KPI. We also have brought in AI components into the way we operate, into the way we teach OKRs. And here's a link. Here you can test, you can build KPI trees, for example. You can draft your KPIs. There's links on the slides that you can use. Last comment before we take any questions. Throughout the experience of rolling OKRs out across over 500 companies now, through the OKR Institute, we have experienced it over and over again that a big issue, a huge challenge is usually communication. Now, again, back to the first slide. If we don't clearly communicate the difference between KPIs and OKRs, why we are implementing OKRs, are we doing away with KPIs? Are we doing away with the bonuses that we used to pay out for KPIs? That all should be clearly communicated. We should communicate our expectations of the first quarter. If not, there's fear, doubt, insecurities. If I don't understand the difference between KPIs and OKRs clearly as a team member, and now I enter a drafting workshop, and I'm still very unclear and I'm not being supported to understand that difference, I will add to the confusion. And there will be indiscrepancies and uncertainties across teams on how to draft OKRs. That's again pointing out the importance of transparency, not only why OKRs, but also how will we use OKRs complementary to KPIs, complementary to other agile methodologies. With that last comment, would love to open the floor for any questions that you might have. Any questions about the differences between KPIs and OKRs, differences between outputs and outcomes, how you should approach it during drafting workshops to create consistencies? More than welcome. You're welcome to put your questions in the chat or also verbally express it. There's also links to ChatGPT links that we use to generate KPIs, OKRs, how to build your KPI tree. It was just posted in the chat. Any questions? More than welcome. Have I left too much time for questions? Would love to interact with you, answer any questions that you might have. There's more links. You can have a look at the chat, more links to concerning what I've mentioned. If there's no questions, I'll just cover one or two frequently asked questions that we get a lot around KPIs and OKRs. And as I speak, if you think on any more questions, more than welcome to put them in the chat or verbally express them after I've talked about the frequently asked questions that we do get. The fear usually is when we start introducing OKRs, those that have gone through many cycles of using KPIs and have been with the company for decades, for example, will immediately be doubtful. How will this affect my personal performance? Will I be in a position that I might lose out on bonuses? Is OKRs totally different from KPIs? Do they even complement each other? All those questions might be in my mind as an executive or as an experienced team member within the company. We need to address that, as mentioned before, but how do we address it? In our experience, it's best to address it in all workshops being conducted, but also especially during our town hall when we introduce OKRs. That's an opportunity to clear up a lot of doubt, confusion. So top team members needs to generally prepare very well for that meeting, gather questions that's generally asked team members maybe through surveys, what are their fears, what are their doubts, and truly address that throughout the town hall to make sure that we alleviate any doubts, fears, and insecurities about KPIs and OKRs. And if we're unclear about the difference between outputs and outcomes, that all of that is cleared up during town halls or any other engagement, such as our initial workshops. Okay, there's a question about the differences between the links. They have different functions. One is to draft out your KPI trees. One is to compare and link KPIs to OKRs, for example. So they have different functions.
Maybe I can jump in, sorry.
Please go ahead.
This KPI tree, there was a question from Natalia. Actually, this KPI tree is there to define your leading indicators. So sometimes you don't know where you want to start. So this lagging indicator could be, I want to increase my sales. So this is a really, I would say, a very important KPI, but very difficult to reach. Yeah? And then you go a couple of steps back in your processes, or you want to improve your products. So it's leading towards, this KPI should lead towards this lagging indicator increase of sales. So this is about building up this KPI tree. It's a process which takes a bit longer, but then you take this KPI tree and can see, okay, where do I need to improve? And then you can turn this, let's say, underperforming KPIs into a healthy KPI again with the help of OKRs. So that's the sense of this KPI tree. Hopefully I could clarify it.
Thank you for that. Any other questions? Welcome any questions. We all have been in coaching for some time, quite tired of our own voices, so we'd love to hear from you. All good? So we sincerely thank you for your time and truly invite you to engage with us. DS, if you don't mind to put contact email into the chat.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you so much. More than welcome to engage with us. And in the future, on OKR Heartbeat, we'll continue with topics such as these, pressing topics that most organizations struggle with, pain points that they do face. Welcome to attend. The future, we'll always have a different topic.
Maybe also a couple of pain points. I mean, maybe participants also asking, where can I start actually to implement OKRs or to use OKRs? Yeah, so really identify sometimes these underperforming KPIs and see, okay, how can you convert them into healthy KPIs? And that sometimes are these leading indicators, and then you can take a pilot group to convert this underperforming KPI into a healthier one. I think that's about how KPI system and OKRs, the OKR system interact very well with each other. So you need to have two systems in place, which is the KPI system and the OKR system. So they complement each other quite well. And I wouldn't skip KPIs only to implement OKRs. Then we call it also sometimes this pimped up KPI system, which looks like an OKR system. So what also DC, as Kutsia said, is about OKRs is there to create this impact and the benefits for your stakeholders. That can be your employees, that can be your customers, of course, and what outcome you want to create. KPIs are there to, of course, monitor the health of the organization, your financial marketing numbers, but then you should really interact and link a KPI system and OKRs together to have here really good interaction. So I wouldn't skip the KPI system because you want to implement the OKR system. Always leave the KPI system in place.
Would just like to add one comment before we end. All the slides that you saw were taken from our current courses, where we elaborate more and more on the difference between KPIs and OKRs. For example, the difference between leading and lagging indicators. Those are very useful topics to clearly understand before you enter a drafting workshop, and dramatically impacts the quality of the OKRs that your team draft. So it will be very beneficial to go through a practitioner and leadership course. The leadership course focuses on the communication around it. And without it, OKRs truly, in most cases, fail, because communication is the glue that holds everything together. How we will be drafting OKRs, how we will be communicated, how thoroughly, how we will conduct our weekly reviews or check-ins and our quarterly reviews. Those are all critical elements that needs to be understood and practiced to ensure the sustainability and success of OKRs. And those are all elements of our courses. So you have our contact details in our emails if you want to purely ask questions. Also more than welcome to engage us. And also more than welcome, of course, if you want to take part in any of those courses to learn more. around how we apply leading and lagging indicators, how we integrate KPIs and OKRs. So I want to sincerely thank you for your time. I just want to make sure, it seems like there's, oh, it's just a comment. There's no more questions. Thank you, Ivana, for your attendance. You said that it's been helpful, and so thank you so much. It's great that we've added some value to you. So I hope to see you at our next event. We'll stay in touch.
See
All
you.
the best and have a great week further.
Thank you.